We recently just released a webcomic. It's lore for the new Urbex rescue jacket that we're making. First glance, you're probably wondering, how does this relate? If you read it, you'll see why, but it's basically just the first rescue, which led to the founding of that unit and the jacket. I thought it'd be neat to go through it in terms of like how it was made, the ideas behind it, and all that stuff. So let's put a little table of contents right here. I was either trying to make a horror webcomic or trying to make lore for the jacket. I forgot which came first, but at some point I decided to combine them, probably out of efficiency. Since I tend to juggle mediums like writing, illustration, 3D, live action, I figured I'd treat this project like a test kitchen. The result is a comic that doesn't scream its connection to the Urbex rescue jacket, but more like quietly muttering in a dark room at 3 a.m. It tells the story of the first successful rescue after a long stretch of nobody ever coming back when they went missing. That's when the Urbex Rescue Department was born. But it wasn't called that until after they came back. Ghostn was always gonna have lore. No one really asked for it, but I'm giving it to you anyways. The tone of the world lands somewhere between Chainsaw Man and SCP. It's gritty, it deals with a lot of things like other dimensions, other beings, things that are just anomalies basically, and straight up monsters. The comic is set in the past when institutions were still pretending the paranormal wasn't real, but obviously they were wrong. The creed printed on the Urbex rescue jacket wasn't written by someone in an office. It came from lived experience. This comic shows that experience, indirectly, which in this universe is about as direct as it gets. So it starts with a guy in the slums of a decaying city. He stumbles upon a missing poster, and coincidentally, that was the person he was sent here to find. What he doesn't know, though, is that people that go missing here never come back. He's new, naive, doesn't know the history, and is optimistic enough to be dangerous. Someone who could kind of disrupt the status quo. Then a girl shows up. She warns him off, and it sounds like a test. Because it is, and he passes. She tags along. Then a third person inserts himself. He's intense, like someone who read the script and decided to take it personally. Together they go too deep. The slums fall away into something older. The ground goes from the familiar asphalt and cement of civilization into something forgotten. The stuff you'd see in like ancient temples and ruins that you'd only learn about in history class. Except these weren't in any history books. At least the known ones. The deeper they went, the more convoluted the passage of time became. And eventually their lights die, but since they have no choice to keep moving, to either escape or find this girl, they eventually fall. They should have died, but instead, something catches them. The next thing they knew, they emerge with the missing girl, alive. People are shocked. Only one of them knows the truth. The truth that they only made it because of divine intervention. And everybody knows divine intervention is hardly ever free. The tone is something stitched together from Junji Ito's Dread, Kentaro Miura's world building, and Fujimoto's takes on devils or anomalies. There's also a bit of inspo from Yabako Sandrovic, who made one of my favorite mangas, the Kengen series. If you love fighting manga, I highly recommend. It's so good. Art's so good too. And I think the main foundation for all these inspirations was definitely from the SCP Foundation, which was always in the background, which is very Ghostn of them. But since they came first, I think Ghostn is very SCP, which makes more sense. And here's the mood board I had for that. This was my first time making a comic, which meant instead of learning to walk and then running, I was learning to walk while I was being lit on fire. So I mapped out the core plot points, made another mood board, and I commissioned Jess for the darkness deity. Sounds like a casual sentence, but really it felt like I was summoning something. The biggest challenges were layout, pacing, and making it visually interesting, like including detail, without losing my mind. So the darkness deity had to be morally ambiguous, which is a challenge in itself, being able to convey that just by looking at them. And they also had to be terrifying, yet still somewhat beautiful. Kind of like a god that means well but communicates in cryptic dreams and dislocated time. The time I was coming up with this stuff, I just finished Fear and Hunger 2. Highly recommend, by the way. So you might see a lot of stuff pulled from there as well. But I think just the idea of like a deity came from me playing that game. And then the three main characters are loosely based. They're not really. Okay, one of them is not that loosely based, but on two Tekken characters, take a wild guess, and a half-hearted self-insert. Not for any profound reason, it was just because like I needed 3D references and I already had models for those characters. And also just to speed up the process. I used Blender to build scenes and light them so my two-person team didn't have to guess where the shadows would fall. The city was designed as a self-contained ruin, kind of like Kowloon, long past its expiration date, but still breathing. I did backgrounds in 3D and drew over them like putting makeup on a corpse. The style leans hard into manga, especially with the shading, and I was even debating on having it read from right to left, but I figured it'd be easier if it was left to right. But the shading was like a lot of hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and some blending as well. I'd put shadows where it mattered, and like I'd really emphasize just going full black for the shadows and putting more of it to emphasize like dramatic beats or just make something more horrifying. So going with this style, it was very creatively fulfilling. It also served the purpose of making the deity reveal even more shocking because of the different art styles and the fact that it's somewhat in color. And if you're thinking about it lore-wise, it makes sense because these type of beings would just bend reality, so they don't really have to follow these rules. After I posted the comic, I looked at it 3 times. So once just to make sure it existed, the second time to celebrate, and the third to dissect. So I took notes on what worked and what didn't, what needs sharpening, and I realized I want to do this again. This format, this anthology style, it might be the best way to inject more lore into the Ghostn universe. Not everything has to be merch or merch related, but I do feel like this would also help me kind of gauge interest for what could work as merch. But keep watch because we'll be making more of these. Although it might take time because, like I said, it's usually just me and maybe like 1 or 2 other people. Well, after all that, I could just say it was super fun to work on, and it was really amazing to see the final result. Like, I couldn't have done it alone, and I couldn't have done it without Ray. She helped with the line art, and I couldn't have done it without Jess. She did amazing concept art for the darkness deity. Being in charge of everything else was really fun. I've always wanted to dive into this medium because I'm such a big fan of it. You know, like comics, horror manga in general, graphic novels, whatever. It's basically like a movie and a book or something. But yeah, go check it out. It's on our site now, and it's also on our Instagram. Even though you already saw the whole comic here, go on Instagram, look at it again, and share it. Like, subscribe. Thanks for watching. Okay.